concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
Oh boy, it's so professional. Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. Welcome. It is Sunday afternoon, and I am happy to hang out with you for the next few hours and talk FPV. I'm going to be taking your questions, taking questions from you, as has been the case for the whole month of April. I've got Blunty with me. Oh, Blunty, I'm going to unmute you, Blunty. You can jump in whenever you need to jump in. He's just been jumping in and helping out. And we'll be picking questions from the chat and answering them. And oh, there we go. I'll be taking questions from the chat here, regular chat. I'll be taking questions from the beautiful people over in the Discord. I'm waiting for the GIF parade. Now, here it comes. And I'll be taking questions if you want to hit the $sign and leave a super chat. That is how to be sure that I read your question during this stream. But as I've already got some super chats. In fact, Blizzard FPV's super chat was so early that it's actually not in my message queue. So I'm going to read Blizzard FPV's super chat real quick right before we get started. Blizzard FPV, thanks for a $2.20 super chat. Sup, prop nuts. Sup indeed. As I always like to start the live stream, I say always. I just started doing this in the last couple weeks, and I think I'm going to keep doing it. If I don't read your question, don't get offended. Please, don't get your feelings hurt. There are too many questions to read all of them, as always. You can email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. I answer 50 to 100 emails a day lately. and try to help everybody who messages me as much as I can. So if I don't read your message on the stream, that's cool. Just email me. I'll help you out. Charles Murray. What's this about? Just got a notification. Not sure what it is. It's a live stream, Charles. We're going to just hang out and talk for a while. And Luke wants to know, how's my screen? How's my screen? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. What's Luke asking? Well, anyway. I want to start. Is Black Jungle here? I haven't seen any GIFs. Black Jungle would be making GIFs. But I wish Black Jungle were here. I have an update for you guys on this. Oh, hang on. I have to clear this message. I have an update for you guys on this. You may remember this quadcopter was shown to me on a live stream a long time ago, weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. And I roasted it a little bit because there are many decisions made in designing this quadcopter that I would not make. And I thought at first that it was trolling, that it was sort of intentionally made to be bad. And then I realized that it was just some dude making a quadcopter with what he had on hand and, being actually really creative and doing his best. And then I kind of felt a little bit bad for roasting him. And I actually traded him. I traded him a brand new bind and fly for this. And I was going to make some content about it. I actually have made some content about it, and I'm going to fly it, but I was going to fly it. It did hover. I mean, that's not saying much. It did hover, and when I brought it back inside and I was putting a battery on, and I don't know if you can see, the simple act of, I always cinch my battery strap down kind of extra, right? You want your battery strap nice and tight. The act of cinching the battery strap down broke the top plate. It just sort of shattered. The frame is cut from acrylic. If you didn't know that. So it didn't break. I didn't crash it and break it. I broke it putting the battery on. So I am torn. I really want to release a video about this quad. I really want to see it fly, but it currently doesn't have a top plate. So I don't know. Black Jungle, if you're out there, if you send me another top plate, I'll try to put it on there and fly it and get it going. But of course, I don't want to put you under any obligation if you're like, nah, man, I'm good. I certainly understand that. But that's the situation. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, if Bardwell, I mean, you could be like, maybe you're just a gorilla and you broke it. If you're thinking to yourself, well, if Bardwell broke it with his gorilla hands, how would it hold up in a crash? I also was having that thought. Anyway, a little update there. But we are going to take some questions. I'll try to slurp my drink on stream, which I know you guys love. We'll real quick start with this question from FPV Mason, who says, I became a patron, but I don't know my Discord login. Can I show you the receipt and have you give me the role? So unfortunately, no. What happens is I have over 3,000 patrons. I can't manually manage the Discord role for every single one of them. So there's an integration between Patreon and Discord where Patreon communicates with Discord through an API of some kind and automatically enables or disables the role. So the only way that you can get access to the Discord server is to do that integration. If you don't remember your Discord login, why not just make a new Discord account or go to Discord? I don't know, just make a new Discord account and log in, right? Sorry, I as much as I want to just sort of help you and solve your problem for you and make life easy for you, I just can't. If it was a one-time thing, sometimes people will contact me and they're like, well, my credit card got declined and I'm sorry, I'm trying to sort it out, but can you just and I'll just tag them as a patron temporarily, and then just the next month it resets when Patreon wakes up again and checks their role. Occasionally I'll do that because it's not a big deal, but in this case, if I tag you as a patron, then it'll automatically untag you as a patron when Patreon figures out that you haven't integrated. And I'm just not going to do that every month. So, sorry. I'm sure you can sort it out, though. Okay. We got a question here. It's a super chat from Callie FPV. Every time I record... Thank you for a $5 super chat, Callie FPV. Every time I record videos on my O3 Air units, it splits them into 2 video files if they're longer than 3 minutes. That's because, like, so I assume that when you format the card, the SD card, I assume it uses the exFAT file format. I'm not 100. I would guess it does. And the maximum file size is like 4 gig. So if you're recording, like, I don't know why it's 3 minutes exactly. It depends on the resolution and the bit rate that you're recording at. But once the file reaches 4 gig, I'll bet you if you look, you'll see that those files are all 4 gig. There's no way around this. The exFAT cannot handle files bigger than 4 gig, or whatever format it's using can't handle files bigger than 4 gig. So it breaks them up. I should back up. I don't know for sure. Maybe it's, I guess it could be FAT32. I just recently learned that FAT32 can handle up to a 2 terabyte file system, which I assumed FAT32 could handle 32 gig. You know, that's why they call it FAT32. Apparently not. So I'm actually not like super knowledgeable about file systems, and maybe I'm saying wrong things about exFAT versus FAT32. Maybe I should just back away from that ledge a little bit and not sound stupid. But the bottom line is that the 4 gig is the maximum file size that it's going to make. There's no way around that except to record in a lower resolution. Then the files will last longer before they reach 4 gig. But here's the thing. You should be able to put those files in your editor, bump, 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 one by one. They should be 100% seamless. Like, literally, it should be absolutely not even one frame of skip or stutter or overlap. If you put those files into an editor, one after the other, they'll just play completely seamlessly. You can edit them, you can join them, you can do whatever you need to do. Everybody does that, though, not just the O3. GoPros do it, etc., etc. So there's no workaround, but also it's just a limitation of the file system. If you have a GoPro, if you install the GoPro Labs firmware, I think there's an option in the GoPro Labs firmware to have large files larger than 4 gig. I don't know if that really helps you. People are telling me that it's FAT32 that has the 4 gig file size limit. Yeah. Anyway, Helios wants to know what drink. This is a pomegranate squirt. It's a Mio branded flavor squirts. It's a pomegranate squirt. So, we got a question here from Scout Jordan. I just got the Happy Model Mobula 6 HD in the DSMX version for my Spectrum transmitter, and I can't seem to get it bound. The drone enters bind mode, but when I click bind on my transmitter, nothing. Scout Jordan, I am not going to be real helpful because I never flew Spectrum as my daily driver. I made a little bit of Spectrum content once upon a time, just basically to say that I did and to try and help people out, but I don't have a lot of insight here. The one thing I think maybe that could be the issue, I know that Spectrum has like a 22 millisecond and an 11 millisecond protocol. And if you've got the wrong, one selected, it won't bind. But unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of insight into what could be preventing this because I don't have a ton of experience with Spectrum. Sunshine says, what radio is he using? Most have a bind button on the radio. Sunshine, it sounds like the radio is going into bind mode. He sounds like he's pressing bind, but nothing's happening. The only thing I can think of would be the 11 versus 22 millisecond problem. And if there's some other problem that I don't know about, I haven't used Spectrum in forever. I'm sorry I can't be more helpful.
We got a pin from Brandon Beans.
Brandon Beans is reminding us. of the set spectrum sat bind equals 9. Isn't that what puts the flight controller into bind mode though, Brandon?
In the CLI on the AIOs, yeah. So he may be having issues getting into bind properly. So that's one of the things you need to do to bind.
That's interesting because he says the drone enters bind mode, which suggests to me that he is doing whatever you need to do to put the drone into bind mode.
Right.
Yeah. So Scout Jordan, I guess another thing that we could question is whether the drone is really in bind mode, or maybe something is getting confusing. Brandon Beans says you need 11, Big Data Pimp says you need 11 millisecond latency. Brandon Beans is reminding us of the set spectrum sat bind equals 9. Whoops, I'm having trouble here getting the right message pulled up. To put it into binding mode, Brandon Bean says there are, if it's OpenTX, what radio is it, I wonder? Is it OpenTX, EdgeTX? In OpenTX and EdgeTX, you can use auto mode on the DSMX subprotocol, and it will automatically find the right subprotocol.
He has a Spectrum transmitter, I think. I would
guess. So that's not relevant. Yeah. Maybe that's helpful. I really, Brandon Beans gets the credit for this one. So thank you, Brandon, for the help there. Look Boss Bid wants to know the name of my Discord server. So my Discord server is only available to patrons. If you want to join the Discord server, sign up for it as a patron. It's as little as $2 a month. That's the minimum tier. Everybody gets access. Everybody gets equal access. But you do have to sign up as a patron if you want to join. There's a link in the video description to my Patreon if you decide that's something you want to do. Brandon Beans, also super active on the Discord server. I should say, Brandon, I'm going to give you a little bit of a shout out. Actually, that's my way of saying thank you, Brandon, if you will. Brandon Beans. So a lot of times people ask me, hey, Bardwell, can I send you my quadcopter and you fix it for me? Right? And I'm more of a teach a man to fish kind of guy. I usually don't want to just get your stuff in the mail and fix it for you. So I usually say, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. And I refer people to FPV Exchange and the Build Repair Services page. And sure enough, Brandon Beans is in there, the same guy who's given us tips here. Now, this is his drone tuning service, but he also has a build service. And Brandon, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that what that means is that you would also like build or repair people's quads for them. I'm sure he'll chime in chat to say yes or no. But based on what I've seen of you being helpful in answering questions, it seems like you know your stuff. So I will mention that you have that service. I won't go as far as endorsing you because I don't know. For all I know, we're going to find out you just steal everybody's money. I don't think so. But I try not to. I'm a little gun shy about doing personal endorsements of people unless I really know them. But you seem like a smart guy, and I thought I'd mention that you had that out there for people. He says, I will repair and mail and build stuff by mail. Message me for quotes. Yeah. All right, so if Brandon Beans fixes your quad and does a great job, just drop me an email and be like, yeah, he did great. I love the dude. And if he, steals your quad and sells it for, drug money, you can tell me about that too. I think he's pretty good though. I feel so Blunty also has a service. He does remote troubleshooting, but he doesn't like to receive product in the mail and send. He doesn't like to do that. So there you go, Brandon Beans. Brandon's need drugs too. Hey, Black Jungle, I see you there. Has Black Jungle responded to my comment about his quad? He's here. Looking at cows, and he's out there with the cows. Did he see my comment about his I think he didn't. I broke your quad, dude. I'm sorry about that. Unfortunately, I didn't break it doing anything heroic. It just broke. I am too powerful. Let's take a question from G. Gritans. How do you strap down your balance lead, and do you use Goggles 2 or V2 or Goggles 2? I strap down the balance lead with rubber bands. I put the rubber band around the battery and hold the balance lead down. I'll show you. So what I do is, when I take the battery off the charger, I will put the balance lead like this sort of, and wrap the rubber band around it the long way. I make sure that the balance lead is like secure. In other words, you don't want the balance lead like this. That's not helping. So I'll just kind of hold the balance lead in place, and I'm making a big deal out of it, but it's pretty seamless once you get used to it. And then when I finish flying, I take the pack off the quad and I just go like this. And now this pack is used, right? So if it's the short way around the battery, the pack's used. If the balance lead is snug and it's the long way around the battery, the pack is charged. That's how I do it. We got a question here from Nullfield. Nullfield, thank you for a $5 super chat. What charger would you recommend as a first LiPo charger? I'm all for parallel charging as many batteries as much as possible. Thanks. So, if you want a parallel charge, you probably want a higher output charger. I mean, it just depends on time. Like, if you have a 200-watt charger, you can parallel charge 20 batteries at once. It'll just take longer, you know. But it still may be more convenient than plugging and unplugging 20 batteries. So it's just a question of how fast you want to charge, right? A good example of a more powerful, sort of more full-featured charger that's out there today is the Hoda S6 AC. It's a 400-watt charger. It's got its own built-in power supply, so you don't need an external power supply. It's kind of expensive, $170. But that's pretty good for a charger with a built-in AC power supply. I'm assuming if you're like getting your first charger, you don't have a separate power supply. That's a good choice. I like the interface on the Hoda. The build quality is excellent. And 400 watts is going to do you just fine if you're parallel charging. Let's take a question here from Benedict FPV. Thank you for a €2 super chat. Are Apex 2 with 1202.5 800 kV motors good? Apex 2. What's an Apex 2? Oh, the little 2-inch. Oh. Is this real? Is this actually an Impulse RC product? I don't like the fact that the first hit was on... I got one on eBay and I got one on AliExpress. This is not filling me with confidence. This is not an Impulse RC Apex, is it? No. No. I see. Okay, so I searched Apex 2. I was like, I didn't think Impulse RC made a 2-inch. They make a 3-inch. And then the first hit was eBay, and the second hit was AliExpress, and I was like, oh, I see. So maybe this is a good frame, but it's not made by Impulse RC, as far as I can tell. So don't assume you're getting Impulse RC quality carbon, etc. It does have the hexagonal standoffs. It seems like it's meant to kind of look like an Impulse RC product. Don't be misled there. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. Everybody says you should just get the Odonata. Odonata! Brandon Beans says, my buddy just built on this frame and he loves it. The thing is, on these little frames, I mean, there's so little to them. It's almost like there's not as much room for innovation. There's still some room. I don't really have a comment about the frame. It's pretty basic. It looks like it'll hold what you need. Where does the Vista mount? It says it's got room for Caddx Polar, Nebula, Nana. Where does the Vista going to mount? Is it going to go above the flight controller? Brandon Bean says, the Odonata is good. I built one, but I keep breaking it. Oh. You like this better than the Odonata. Them's fighting words. And then the motors, I see. They naked stack it over the AIO. I don't love that. I guess there aren't a lot of choices. I kind of like what the GepRC Smart 3.5 did, where they mounted the Vista to the top plate and the flight controller to the bottom. That keeps the flight controller isolated. It's cheap. I mean, it's freaking $10, so I think it's worth a shot. And then what'd you say? 1202 motors? 1202, 800 kV? 800 kV, you mean 8,000 kV, don't you? Do you mean 8? I think you must mean 8,000 kV. That seems okay. A 2-inch carrying a Vista is kind of extreme, isn't it? I guess there are a few of the Fireflies like that. But the Firefly is a toothpick style frame. So the Firefly Baby 2S comes with DJI. And it flies okay, but definitely some compromises for the weight. As you get into this weight of frame, I mean, you start flying worse and worse. Joey W suggests 1206 7500 kV. He thinks your 1202s might be a little too small. 1206 is a lot bigger than 1202. So consider larger motors, but it's a certain point where you're so heavy that those 2-inch props just really can't make it fly good. Especially if you have a DJI on it. Are you sure you really have to have a 2-inch? Could it be a 3-inch? A 3-inch is going to be way better. Abraham, confident that a 2-inch is plenty for a naked Vista and an all-in-one. I don't know. We'll see. Nikki asks, is the Commando 8 or the TBS Tango 2 better? What other controller can you recommend? Max 200 euros. Nikki, the good news is that with a max of 200 euros, you have a lot of great choices for controllers. The Tango 2's, the big advantage of the Tango 2 is that it has built-in Crossfire. So if you fly Crossfire, the Tango 2 could be a good choice. Obviously, you can get whatever other radio you want and put a Crossfire module in it, but having the Crossfire module integrated is kind of nice. The Tango 2, the big disadvantage of it, to me, is that it doesn't run EdgeTX or OpenTX, the open source firmware that most other radios used by people in FPV run. And what that means is that you rely on TBS as the bottleneck for the development. I don't want to mischaracterize the situation. In the past, I thought that only TBS was doing the development on the firmware they use is called FreedomTX. It is derived from OpenTX, but it is not OpenTX. In the past, I said that TBS was doing the development and was told that that was not 100% true, that there was a procedure whereby open source developers could submit code for inclusion in FreedomTX. And so I will back away from those details because I don't want to get them wrong and I don't want to mischaracterize them. But the bottom line is that only TBS can publish this code. And TBS is the sort of final bottleneck as to what code gets into Freedom TX and when that code is released. And my observation from the outside, whatever the reason is behind the curtain, my observation from the outside is that Freedom TX is a lot slower to develop and doesn't have a lot of the features, etc., that Edge TX is adding. So a big drawback for me with the Tango 2 and the Mambo is that they run a firmware that is not sort of on this sort of cutting edge of what Edge TX is doing. Now, a lot of the stuff that Edge TX is doing is related to Express LRS. Not all of it. And so from that perspective, it's not relevant for the Tango 2. Or is it? Because the Tango 2 can also have an Express LRS module on the back. Some people would think that's heresy, but you can do it. So to me, I would like a radio that runs Edge TX, and I would shy away from a radio that runs sort of Freedom TX, which is kind of locked down, and you can't just wait for the Edge TX devs to put out a new firmware and flash it. If that changed, if there was a version of Edge TX that I could just flash to the Tango 2 without having sort of TBS be the bottleneck, I might feel differently. Stefan32 says, I got a Boxer to replace my Mambo only because of Freedom TX. Yeah. Now that we're comparing it to the, what are we comparing it? Was it the Commando 8? We were comparing it to the Commando 8. So the Iflight Commando 8, it's an okay radio. To me, so price of $129, good price. To me, the big limitation of the Commando 8 is the lack of switches and buttons. It just doesn't have very many switches and buttons. See, look on the backside. Like, there's nothing back here. So you basically got these shoulder buttons. You got a 3-position and a 2-position, or a moment. Are they momentaries? Is there even a 2-position? You basically have 4 switches. Technically, you've got momentary switches down here on these joysticks that you can use. It just isn't a very versatile radio in terms of what you can do with it, the switches and so forth. So it's not a bad radio, but it wouldn't be my first choice. If you're looking for a game controller style radio, the Radio Master Zorro can be had for $100, 4-in-1, even Express LRS built in. And has a lot. I like the ergonomics better. That's a personal decision. Some people feel that the screen really ruins the small form factor of these gamepad style radios, and think that's ridiculous. It has way more switches. Like you can see here, we've got 1, 2, 3 switches on each side. A 3-position, a 2-position, a momentary, and a slider knob. And there's a momentary here on the back. Tons of switches. The big downside of the Zorro is it uses very small batteries. I don't remember the exact size. It's like a 3500, 13, whatever. I don't remember. 18350. There you go. And the battery life is like very much shorter than some people would like. You can plug in an external battery pack that's kind of annoying. So that's a deal breaker for some people. And then the Jumper T Pro is another one that is in that category. Has more switches, although not as many as you might like. I guess on a gamepad radio, maybe you're fine with that. So I personally, if I wanted a gamepad style radio and I flew Crossfire, I might just go ahead and get the Tango, but I would think hard about it. Mike Speedy loves the Tango 2. Now, a lot of people here are saying that they like the Boxer, the Radio Master Boxer. We got a bunch of messages about that. I currently fly the Boxer as my daily driver. But if you really want a gamepad style radio, you may not want the Boxer. I think the Boxer is very good. Loving my Boxer. Bad for Life says, I've got a Tango 2, a T Pro, and a Commando 8. The Commando 8 wins by far, but I like the smaller gimbals. Bad for Life, how do you deal with the limited... I guess, I mean, if you only need, like, an arm switch, an angle mode switch, and a turtle mode switch, yeah, it could work. It could work. Brian Lewis wants to know, what new OpenTX features pertain to FPV drone flying that aren't available through stuff like the Express LRS Lewis script? So I have to think. Part of it is just that I like to be up to date, and I don't. So, like, for example, here's one. I don't think this has changed. Tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, if this has changed. But at least for a long time, and possibly through to the present, Tango 2 can't run a Ghost module. Tango 2 doesn't have any support for the Ghost protocol. Or if it does, it didn't used to. Okay? So if you had a Tango 2 and Immersion RC releases the Ghost module and you're like, yeah, I'll try it out. Tango 2 has a module bay. The Ghost module will plug into the module bay. The software doesn't support it. EdgeTX and OpenTX, they released support for Ghost. Immersion RC worked with the developers so that on the day that the product released, the software was there. But Tango 2 users didn't have access to it. And I think they still don't. So that's a big situation where TBS, I mean, I have to assume that the reason it wasn't integrated, well, let's assume that the reason, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that it was just that it was too much work to integrate this new protocol into their radio firmware and they just had better stuff to do. Fine. Even with no malicious intent, like obviously you could also imagine that they were just like, hey, this is a competitor, we're not gonna touch it. But even with no malicious intent, their customers didn't have access to this if they wanted it. And I think they still don't. So EdgeTX radios, I believe that they currently sample the gimbals at the native resolution, at the native packet rate of the protocol. So if you're running at 500 hertz, your gimbals are sampled at 500 hertz and it's all synced up and good. I don't think that the Tango 2 gimbals can sample that fast. Is that like a deal breaker? I don't know. Some people care though. Some people care. Rauk FPV says, I had the Commando 8. After 2 weeks of using it, I sold it because the gimbals are horrible. The fan vibrates the radio. Overall, a disappointing radio. Zeno, how are you running Ghost on your Tango? Have you got the secret thing that lets you enable Crossfire mode on the Ghost? Because that's the only workaround that I know of. For those who... Okay, now I can't just say that and leave it hanging. The Ghost module talks to the radio using the Ghost protocol. But the Ghost module can also receive like an S-bus input signal or a PWM signal. Or it turns out that when they were developing Ghost, it had the ability to take a Crossfire signal from the radio. So Ghost doesn't support Crossfire in the air, but it can take a Crossfire signal from the radio, and that would make it compatible with the Tango 2. They disabled that when the product was released because I think that it would have just made Trappy scream, and they didn't want that. Anyway. So I'm being told that the Ghost TX can run in Crossfire mode. I'm sure that they disabled that originally, and there was a secret like firmware that you could flash that would re-enable it. Maybe that changed and Immersion RC opened that up to everybody, in which case you can use Ghost on the Tango, but not because of anything TBS did. Fine. Alrighty, we're going to move on from this topic. One last question. Willie wants to know, do we really need 1 watt of Express LS for freestyle? Define need, Willie, right? Do you really need 1 watt? If you are willing to run Express LRS at 50 hertz, then no, you probably will outrun your video with, 100 milliwatts or 250 milliwatts of output power. I'm just making these numbers up, but you see you get the point. But if you want to run at 250 hertz or 500 hertz or 1,000 hertz because you feel like that latency is beneficial to you, then your range comes down and you need all the output power you want. The other thing is that the ceramic antennas have about 6 dB of reduced sensitivity, reduced whatever range, and a 6 dB reduction in the antenna sensitivity can be countered by a 6 dB increase in output power. So if you want to use the EP2 ceramic receivers, if you want to use 500 hertz or 1,000 hertz, then you want that output power, in my opinion. All right, continuing on.
Real quick, sorry. What,
yeah, Blunty.
Oh, yeah. Go
ahead.
Zero has one. Zeno has one more comment there I pinned. So that may be helpful.
I don't know. I don't think it stopped working. What I'm saying is when Ghost first came out, Crossfire support was locked out. The only way to get it was with a secret firmware that Immersion RC would not give you. They gave it to me once and were like, don't share this because I had a particular thing I needed to do. And they were like, fine. And I think that at some point they were like, all right, it's been long enough, and they opened it up, and now it works for everybody. That's what I think happened.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there was still a CRSF selection in the menu or you had to pick auto, so I was making sure people know you might have to pick auto.
Oh, so if you pick auto, then it just works, wink, wink. There's no Crossfire selection in the menu. Okay.
That might be the case. Yeah, I just wanted to share that just in case.
Okay. Got it. Let's see here. Jose Navarro wants to know, is Ladrib's reaction of the new WalkSnail night camera justified? The WalkSnail night camera is very good. Like, it is not like full infrared night vision, but it's extremely good. I can't say, is his reaction justified? When you fly with that camera, will you feel that his reaction was appropriate, or will you think it was overblown for YouTube or whatever? I think that it was a sincere reaction. If you're not used to flying night cameras, when you see that, and if you fly digital, how long has it been since Drib flew analog? He was one of the, by the way, he was one of the first guys to say, I'm switching to DJI and I'm never going back. Can we take a pause here? Drib was right. When DJI first came out, I don't know if everybody today remembers how sort of on the fence people were. Like today, if you ask people, is DJI better than analog? A whole lot of people go, what a stupid question. Why would you even ask that? Not everybody, but a lot of people. And when it first came out, people were like, I don't know, it's got some pros, it's got some cons. And Drib was like, F this, I'm never flying analog again. And I was like, are you for real? Okay, that's not a direct quote. Okay. I think if it was here, he would probably lean into it and be like, yeah, no. He was like, I'm done with analog. I'm never going. And I was like, that's a bold statement. He was like, no, this is good. And a lot of people were like, Rotorite shill. He's just saying, and he was right. A lot of people eventually came around to his way of thinking and were just like, yeah, no, F analog, I'm not flying it anymore. Anyway, So I think that I don't know if he ever really flew night vision analog cameras, and if he did, it was years ago. And for people who only have been exposed to digital to then get a proper night vision analog camera in the WalkSnail system, it's very good. So, Sunshine, I don't think you give up much quality at all during the daytime flying. It's not the kind of night camera where if you fly it in the day, it's unusable, right? That's different. It's perfectly usable in the daytime. The only reason I would hesitate to use it as my daily would be that I like the 4:3 field of view of the other camera. But I would 100% use that. If I flew 16:9 and I knew that that was my preferred way of flying, I would 100% fly that camera as my daily and just never think about it being dark ever again. Bob H. asks, does Rotorite actually prefer the WalkSnail system, or is it just because they're sponsored by Fat Shark? I mean, I couldn't presume to speak for them. They clearly run a store, and they are interested in selling product. So, like, I don't think the Fat Shark sponsorship, I mean, they're sister companies. They're owned by the same company. I don't know how much that comes into it. Like, Rotorite was selling the shit out of DJI even after WalkSnail released. I think if there's a good product that people want to buy, that the pilots sincerely like and want to use, then they'll sell it. And when you see things like they stop selling a certain product and they maybe start selling a different product, people imagine all this political intrigue that is complete bullshit and just a soap opera in your mind that has no bearing in reality most of the time. So I couldn't say what they're like, do they sincerely like it, or they just fly it because they sell it. I mean, I don't think they would sell a product that they thought was bad, and they certainly wouldn't want to fly a product that they thought was bad. Do they sell a product like, does somebody at Rotorite think that the O3 is the best air unit? Like, I'll tell you, I'll speak for myself. When I go make Rotorite videos, I bring a Skyliner with me, and it's got the WalkSnail system on it, because I know that's the product that they probably are most interested in selling. And since they've paid my expenses to fly me out there and to go be in videos with them, they put me up in an Airbnb for a week, they buy me meals, and they pay me a day rate to come be on episodes. The least I could do is use their gosh dang product, right? Seems like it's basic courtesy. I fly DJI as my daily, right? I have some WalkSnail quads, but mostly what I fly is DJI V2. So, but when I go shoot Rotorite videos, I bring a Rotorite quad and it's got WalkSnail on it. So what does that mean? I don't know. You sort of figure that out. I also fly WalkSnail some of the time. Just because it's not my number one favorite thing to fly all the time forever doesn't mean that when I choose to fly it for a Rotorite video, like I'm being insincere or something. The Skyliners, that's a great quad. The main reason I don't fly the Skyliner more is because I want to make sure that I don't explode it doing some dumb shit and then have to be like, Drew, I need another Skyliner, please. I don't want to just sort of blow it up. I want to have it ready to go shoot episodes with them. Anyway. Let's take a few minutes. We're almost an hour into the stream. I'm super backed up on super chats, so we're going to focus on clearing out the queue of super chats. Okay. FPV Mason 893, thank you for $1 super chat. Don't see a question, FPV Mason. Aaron Ross, thank you for a $5 super chat. I live where it rains. A lot. I bought some silicone conformal coating to waterproof my Darwin FPV Tiny Ape. Is that enough to fly in the rain? Yes. In short, yes. It's not possible to 100% completely waterproof a quad. Like the camera sensor, you can't put conformal on the camera sensor. There are some parts that you can't really put conformal on, but rain isn't that intrusive most of the time. So if you conformal coat the ESC and the flight controller, you'll probably be all right. Chris Richardson, thank you for a £5 super chat. For no other reason that every time I've Googled for help, your YouTube has popped up. Yes, it's working. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for the donation. Savas Ionides. Thank you for €5. Cheers to the new format with Blunty. Yes, indeed. I think today's going really well. I'm paying less attention to the clock today, and I can tell I'm rambling for like 15 minutes on some of these, and that's actually not ideal. Ideally, we worked it out, and in order to get enough clips for the Livestream clips channel, the ideal length for an individual segment is about 8 minutes. But it's a little more casual, I think. You know,
I would also suggest that the 2 minute and 3 minute clips make up for that, because the last live stream, like when I pulled Sundays, we had 24 clips, and we definitely don't. So it just depends on the day. I think you're doing great. That's what I'll say.
Oh, thanks. That always feels good to hear. Steve Tricks, thank you for $1.49. Plenty. I want to make sure these ones that don't have any question attached, are they just stickers? Or did the person? I believe
so, but I can't see that feed, so it's difficult for me to know. But yes, I believe they're stickers. A couple of them, sometimes people left a message, but like, for instance, the FPV Mason, you answered a question from him earlier, and then he's left a couple stickers, I believe. So
gotcha. If you leave a super chat and you don't attach your message to the super chat, but then you put the message in chat later, there's a chance that we'll miss it because the super chats are getting called out.
I believe Stevie Trick said he left a glizzy.
Yes, it was a hot dog. Unfortunately, this plugin doesn't pick up the stickers. So, Quad City Bay Area, thank you for a $5 super chat. For RC Link, I understand lower packet rate increases range. Can you explain output power range and how it increases range? If I understand your question correctly, Quad City Bay Area, higher output power is simply like shouting louder. Okay, so sound is a phenomena that is similar in a lot of ways to RF, and it's more easy for us to understand. And a higher output power is simply shouting louder. And of course, the louder you shout, the further away someone can hear you. The actual answer is that we're making electromagnetic waves, and those electromagnetic waves have energy, and that energy decreases as the wave travels out through space. And so the more energy or the more power you put into the electromagnetic transmission, the further it will go before it's too weak for you to detect it. I'm not 100% sure I understood your question, but I hope I did. Finley FPV, thank you for a $2 super chat. Do you prefer the DJI Goggles Integra, Goggles 2, or V2? So I haven't got the Integra, so I can't speak to the Integra. Between the Integra, well, now I'm going to just mix it up, right? Between the Integra and the Goggles 2, I'm glad that I own the Goggles 2. I like the adjustable focus in the Goggles 2. As someone with bad eyes, that's a feature that I'm going to use all the time. Not everybody has bad eyes and may care about that. The Goggles Integra do have inserts but the problem is that a lot of times if I'm in a group setting, I'll be like, here, take a look at my quad, or somebody will hand me their goggles, right? And if I have to swap the inserts in and out, it's kind of annoying. But if I can just twist a focus adjustment, it's really nice. The V2 goggles, I'm not sure which I like better. The V2 goggles have a little bit better fit. They're a little more comfortable. They're heavier, but I think they have a little bit better fit. Whereas the Goggles 2 are smaller and lighter, but don't quite fit as comfortably. But the Goggles 2 have the OLED screen, and oh my god, that's so nice. So I think I'm going to end up settling on the Goggles 2 for the newer quads and keep using the V2 goggles for the older ones. If you were buying today, I think if you were buying today, the Integra is the right choice. And the reason I say that is that the Integra is close to the same price as the V2 goggles. And I think the V2 goggles are being phased out. I think they're being phased out. I think they are currently hard to buy new, and they're going to get harder. And so I think that it's risky to buy the V2 today. If you get a good deal on a used set of V2, I think it's going to be okay. But I think just for future-proofing reasons, I would lean toward the Integra. RC Ritter says the V2 is much better fit and frame rate. The Goggles 2 hurts to wear, but the screen is pretty. You're not, I don't 100% agree with that, but I also don't 100% disagree. Brandon Bean says, I'll trade my V2 goggles for G2 or Integras. Hit me up. I think the V2 are going to become a little bit of a collector's item because some people will want to use them with their Vistas, especially with WTF-OS being a thing. Steve Trick says, I prefer the Integra after using both back-to-back. The V2 goggles do have higher frame per second. They go up to 120 frame per second, whereas the Goggles 2 only do 100. To me, that's not like a deal-breaker feature, but to some people it might be. FPV Mason, thanks for another $1 super chat. Just in case you just tuned in, we are trying to clear out the super chats and catch up with the super chats before we go on with the rest of the stream. Toilet Ducks, thank you for a $5 Australian super chat. Is there any legit reason for someone that flies freestyle or mid-range quads to swap from a Tango 2 to a TX16S? So am I assuming that you're still going to use Crossfire? I guess it doesn't really matter, but that might be relevant. The main reason you would switch from a Tango 2 to a TX16S is the form factor. You want the bigger radio with the great big color touchscreen. You want to have a whole bunch of switches, right? The other thing that the TX16S could give you is a higher output power. The Tango 2's max output power is, does it go up to 1 watt or is it 500 milliwatts? I think it's 500 milliwatts. Chat, help me. What?
Tango 2 is 1 watt. I'm sorry.
Is it 1 watt? Is it 1 watt? It was 500.
Yeah, since the V3 boards, they were selling V3 boards for the old ones, or you could, all the new ones come with 1 watt.
Okay, so then there's not really a big advantage to switching to a module in terms of output power. I appreciate that, Blinty. See, I would have just let that slide, and then it would have been wrong, and I would have been like, "It's a live stream. What do you expect?" Now we got Blinty here to keep me on point. So the main reason you would do that would be the form factor, and either you want that or you don't. But that's a personal decision. Oof. Wow. Your Majesty says, Steele had a video comparing Goggles 2 to V2 goggles, and there was a huge difference in latency and FPS. But Blunty points out that Steele was in low power mode. And interestingly, on the Goggles 2 in low power mode, they don't reduce their output power, but they do change their frame rate and encoding to save power. Sheesh. Ouch. Did he pull the video down, or is it still up?
As far as I know, it's still up. I could check real quick.
Wow. That's, that really...
I mean, that's not the first time he's had a video up with wrong information and did not pull it down.
You would really want to pull that down. Man.
No, he's still got it up. Yeah.
Wow. Really? What video is it?
Why I sold my DJI Goggles 2s 1 month ago.
I didn't watch that. I was like, okay, sold them. He didn't like them.
Again, it's not the first time he's posted a video where he doesn't do the proper testing and then makes an assumption and does some major statement about the assumption, and everybody believes it. So.
Air unit in low power state. Yeah, air unit in low power state. Oh, you know what it is? I mean, I haven't even watched the video, so now I'm just going to talk shit, but so take it with a grain of salt. I bet he thought that low power state just means low output power, like it does on the Vista. So he was like, look, why is, of course it's in low power state, but it's only 1 foot away. Why is the frame rate so shitty? He didn't realize that the O3 air unit manipulates the frame rate and so forth when it's in low power, not the output power. Wow, that's pure speculation, but comparison. There's no flight, the whole test is in low power. Holy shit.
Also, just for the people in chat saying he made a comment about it on some other stream, I would suggest that that's the kind of thing you would add in a pinned comment to the video you made the statement in.
You would take the video down.
Or take the video down, but if there's other reasons or you believe there's some reason you should keep it up, then you should at least make a pinned comment on the video with the relevant comment.
Here, are people roasting him? Air units will limit them. This person's Toby is telling him about. Wow.
Yeah, many people in the comments have suggested this. He hasn't replied to any of them. So.
Yikes.
Or pinned any of them or anything.
Okay.
Right.
Well, good news. He's got 78,000 views for this. That's just. It just goes to show that what gets views is what's sensational and not necessarily what's right, which is the world we live in. Alrighty. Well, anyway, that sucks. You should really. I live in fear. I have to say, I live in fear of posting a video with some like glaring mistake and then just getting absolutely roasted in the comments. And it's happened. I'm not even going to try to remember. I can't remember a specific example of a place where not only did I F up, but the F up is right there in my face in the video for everyone to see, like low power mode, just glaring at me. So like, there's not even any like deniability or anything. And then I take the video down because it embarrasses me, and I apologize, hopefully, or at least put a pinned comment. All right, now go through my history and find the time when I did that. Anyway. FPV Mason, thank you for a $2 super chat. Will we see a custom JB Boxer? I wouldn't say it's impossible, but there are no current plans for that. Finley FPV wants to know, well, thank you for two pounds. What about with the O3? With the O3, I fly the O3 with the goggles too. But if you're buying today, the Integra is a pretty good deal at a lower price point. I feel like we already sort of dug through that pretty deeply, so we're going to move on from that one. Continuing to try to clear up all the super chats that have come in. Keep the super chat train going. We may never go back to the regular chat. I'm just saying. A Bannister Post, thank you for a $7 Canadian. Please, with all this control link talk, what are go-to, reliable, well-built Express LRS receivers in your opinion? I think that Happy Model has a pretty good track record. I have heard of some people having problems with the new Diversity Happy Models, but I'm not sure if that's actual problem or if it's just something, one person with a problem. I think the Radio Master receivers are solid. I've had good results with the Jumper receivers. Just because the Jumper receivers come in all the Jumper... If you think about it, Jumper puts their own Jumper Express LRS receiver in all their bind and flies. So, yeah, they probably got that pretty right. Those are some good ones. Not the only ones, but some good ones. Maytech, very good. Maytech makes good stuff too. Scamper says Happy Model 20% failure rate for me. Yeah, I wonder if Happy Model has fallen off a little bit. I have a friend who builds quads professionally, and he is thinking about switching to Express LRS for some of his builds, and he bought like 3 or 4 Happy Model EP1 receivers, and he couldn't get them to bind. And I got on the phone with him for like 45 minutes and tried to help talk him through it. Couldn't get him to bind. And finally, he came back to me a little while later and he was like, yeah, dude, 3 of those receivers were just bad. It wouldn't bind. I put the 4th one on and it worked fine. So Happy Model may be dropping off. Race Day Quads, Jumper, Maytech. That guy Carlos says Beta FPV have been solid. I just am really hesitant about relying on Beta FPV hardware. Steve Tricks, I can assure you he didn't brick them. I mean, I was working with him. They weren't bricked. They weren't in bootloader mode. They just wouldn't bind. Like, it was mine. I was like, bro, I don't know. Why? I don't know. And we were like, well, maybe try a new receiver. Because if you have one and it won't bind and you try everything, you try a new one and maybe it's bad. And then the second one wouldn't bind. And I was like, dude, I don't know. It's something you're doing. Happy Model has never been premium quality Aerobrat, but their Express LS receivers have been pretty solid.
This might be a good time to chime in. If you do have binding issues, don't forget there is that issue where you need to go to the web UI and set your binding phrase if it's been done before, because otherwise you'll go crazy thinking you're reflashing the correct binding phrase, but it will not work.
That's true. I have changed my procedure for how I tell people to bind, and I now tell them to go to the web UI and type the binding phrase. I don't tell them to flash, in part for that reason.
I'm doing the same thing now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Dmitry Shafransky, for 111 CZK. I think I know what that is. Is it Czech? Czech Karuna. For 111 of those. What are the benefits of TX16 Mark II versus the Jumper T Pro? I own both. I'm not using the TX16 much. All the config is done on the PC. I don't use the screen. Do you use the screen often? I use the screen a lot. I prefer to configure the radio on the screen. I don't like plugging the radio in to the computer to configure it because I don't get real-time feedback. When I use EdgeTX Companion to set up the radio, I don't get real-time feedback, and I find that I have to save and write the models to the radio and then look at the radio, and maybe it's right, maybe it's not. I do all my setup on the radio. I just use the computer for backups. Now, I currently have the Radiomaster Boxer, which doesn't have a great big screen, but I get the job done. The TX16S is certainly nicer. If you find that you don't use the screen and you want a smaller radio, then the T Pro might be the best for you. The other thing about those smaller radios, though, is the gimbals are smaller. The TX16S has full-size gimbals, and I also prefer those. Quad City Bay Area wants to know. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Quad City Bay Area. What with the WalkSnail night camera, you can only capture goggle footage. Action camera footage would be dark and crappy, right? Quad City Bay Area, I don't know about that. Obviously, the action camera footage is not going to look as good, right? But if you go look at my abandoned mall freestyle video, that's all GoPro footage. And I was flying with the DJI V2 camera, which is not a night camera, but it's better light sensitivity than the GoPro. That what'll happen is that the GoPro or action camera will have to jack the ISO through the roof, and the image will get really grainy with a lot of image noise. Or you can lock the ISO so it isn't allowed to jack it through the roof, and it'll be dark. I've seen videos where the pilot was flying in the dark, and like you can see the lights of the parking garage down below them, but it's super dark where they're up in the night sky. And it was still like a good freestyle video. Now the pilot was seeing more detail than you were seeing. So it's not a given that the action camera image is going to be useless. But you will need to be aware that the action camera has less light sensitivity than the FPV camera. And you'll need to, you would want to practice, and you try it with auto ISO, try it with locking the ISO, and see what gives you results that you find acceptable. Asif Kachlon, thank you for a 15. I don't know what that is. Is it rupees? Asif Kachlon, thank you for your super chat. My QX7 starts the sound but stops after a second and won't turn on. What can I do? I tried changing the internal battery. I would reflash it. Try reflashing it, and try a new SD card with fresh SD card contents. Those are some things I do when a QX7 or an OpenTX radio won't turn on. And changing the internal battery is a fair attempt too. Try the SD card. That's easy. Continuing my attempt to catch up on the Super Chats. Save Tricks, we have currently... we're only 4 Super Chats left, and then we're going to get back to the regular questions. Steve Tricks, thank you for a $10 Super Chat. Thank you. You've left several Super Chats. Thank you very much for that. I love your Discord server. It's my first stop anytime I have a question or I'm just bored and want to chat or discuss FPV. Do you ever host Discord or Patreon exclusive streams or chats? You know what? I haven't. Like, occasionally I will, in the middle of the night, I'll stream like some video game content on Discord, but it's, a lot of people miss that. I have thought about doing a more engaged Q&A, like where you maybe have 15 or 20 minute blocks of time and people can screen share or use their camera and you actually try and work through a more detailed problem with them instead of this style of Q&A where you ask a question and I talk for a while and then we move on. I've thought about doing that as a patron-only benefit. I haven't ever really sat down and made the logistics work. But generally, my attitude, and this is still true, my attitude is that I give away almost all of my content for free. So I don't have patron-exclusive, behind-the-scene YouTube videos, almost never. I put all of my effort into helping everybody I can. And then, if you feel like it, you become a patron. But you don't become a patron because you, want a reward. Well, you want to join the Discord server. Okay, I held that back. Mostly you become a patron because you feel like you get value from the content and you want to pay it back. And then, if there's a little bit of a reward or a bonus, hey, cool. I don't put out as many videos as I used to. I used to put out 5 to 7 videos a week. They were much shorter and with less production value, and it was just little, like the kind of stuff we put in the news right now. Maybe each one of those might have been a dedicated video in the past. But I used to put out 5 to 7 videos a week. I edited my own videos, and I was just working. I was working nonstop. And when I started the Patreon, I was like, I don't have any time to make additional patron-exclusive content. I'm already making all the content it's humanly possible to make. So I was like, okay, I'll make the Patreon, but I'm not giving you guys shit. I already give you everything. So that's kind of been my attitude. But it does sound fun to do a chat room or a video chat room where you tag one person and they share their camera and then you try and actually fix a problem with them instead of just talking it through. I might do that. Here we are again with Quad City Bay Area. Another $5. Thank you, Quad City, for more donations. What I mean is packet rate more important for range and penetration than output power. So Quad City Bay Area, we can 100% answer this question. We can 100% answer this question in a numerical and definitive way. If we go to this page, here we go. This is the table of receive sensitivity for the different packet rates. And what you can see is the sensitivity limit. There, don't move the screen. The sensitivity limit, 104 dBm, etc. So let's go down here. At 50 hertz, at 50 hertz, we have a sensitivity of minus 115 dBm. Okay? What does that number mean? Don't worry about it right now. We'll not go into that. At 100 hertz, we have a receive sensitivity of minus, I don't like that number. That's 2 dB. That's, let's try minus 112. Oh, that's better. At 100 hertz, at 150 hertz, we have a sensitivity of minus 112 dBm. Do you see that that's a difference? 115 to 112. That's a difference of 3 dB. 3 dB is a doubling or halving of signal strength. So, if you were at 500 milliwatts at 50 hertz, you would get the same range as if you were at 1 watt at 150 hertz. You have gained 3 dB of power, and you have lost 3 dB of sensitivity. Those two things exactly cancel each other out. So you can ask the question, if I go to 250 hertz, that's 108 dBm. If I was at 50 hertz, that's 115 dBm, and I switch to 250 hertz, how much more output power do I need to exactly equal out the difference in range that I lost by going to higher output power? 115 minus 108, that's a 7 dB difference. You need 7 dB more output power to get the same range at 250 hertz as you do at 50 hertz. That's the answer. I actually have a video. Well, how will I find this video? That's the video.
I've never been.
This is the video. The weird relationship between range and output power. If you want a deep dive on this topic, this is the video that you want. Okay. Vishnu Shukla, thank you. That's rupees. I don't know what that what is that monetary symbol? It is a shekel. All right. Thank you, Ashif Kaklon, for 15 shekels earlier. Vishnu Shukla, thank you for 179 rupees. I'm just going to real quick check to see if you had a question. You do have a question. I thought you did. The question is, hello, Joshua. Love from India. I have one question. I have a Beta FPV F7 AIO board. I don't have onboard black box, so how can I PID tune? Please elaborate. You want this device. This is Open Lager with an A, like the beer. And it can... there's a new version. It's hard to find the Airbot one. Here we go. Newbie Drone has made one. This is what you want. The Newbie Drone Open Lager Mini External Black Box Module. With this device, you can log to an onboard data flash chip. Oh, I'm sorry. SD card. Very nice. And that's how you can add black box to a flight controller that doesn't have one. The Newbie Drone Open Lager. Yeah, Blunty, go ahead.
Don't forget Tiny Black Box we showed by Crafted Quad.
Yeah, I remember
that was the one we showed on the roundup, I believe.
Is that, you could buy that? That's $30.
Yeah, but it's way smaller. So it's basically you're spending extra money for a much smaller footprint on your boat.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Sold out. I don't know. Can you actually buy it? Is it still for sale?
Oh, don't know about that.
Crafted Quads, it's out of stock, but that may not mean anything. These days, everything's out of stock. Good point. Good point. Zen Shuet. Oh, wrong screen. Zen Shuet, thank you for a €10 super chat. We have just 2 more super chats after this. Would you have any suggestions for the Iflight AOS 5 to take it from excellent to even better? Different motors, different props, etc. I think the AOS 5 bind and fly is excellent. The changes I would make to it aren't like different motors or props to make it fly better. I think it flies really well. I mean, for a 5-inch mini quad. If you started changing the AOS 5, you would be moving it away from a 5S freestyle mini quad into something else. At that point, that's not a question of better, it's a question of different. I will say, though, to me, a big weakness of the AOS 5 bind and fly is, I've talked about this before on the live stream, so apologies if you heard me talk about it before. A big weakness is that this XT60 cable is not restrained in any way. And if the battery ejects, eventually it rips the pads off the ESC. That happened to mine and destroyed the ESC very regrettably. It's a small thing. And I also would take these stupid plastic protectors off and just tape the wires down, because I think these are bad. These are bad. They shatter and break and cut the wires, in my experience. But only very small things. I think that, like, if you look at the AOS 5 and you go, well, what I would change about it is I would have 6mm arms. I would have 8mm arms because I don't think it's durable enough. You just want a different frame. You don't want a different AOS 5. You want a Rotorite tank or something. So for what the AOS 5 is, I don't think I would change a thing about it. But that's sort of expected when something is as thoroughly thought through and planned as the AOS 5. It's going to be exactly what the creators set out to make it. Matt Sinderson, thank you for a $5 super chat. Any ideas on where to start with a build designed for quiet night freestyle with the WalkSnail Pro? Thinking 3 or 3.5 inch toothpick. Totally agree. A 3 or 3.5 inch toothpick is going to be relatively quiet and lightweight. I totally agree with that. The question of a toothpick or a sub 250 depends on, like, the sub 250 sort of traditional style frame is probably going to give you a little better durability, because on a toothpick, the electronics are all sort of hanging out there, but the toothpick might fly a little bit better. I would personally get the sub 250 for the durability reasons. Oh my goodness. We are caught up on the super chats. Oh, get out of there. That's it. We're caught up. Wow. Amazing. Let's take a look at what's in the queue. And we'll take this question from Tommy B that I clicked on by accident, but let's do it. Tommy B, what's a good soldering iron for small, tiny whoops? Tommy B, any soldering iron is good for anything that you want to solder. At a certain point, you're soldering big honking wires and you need something industrial, but there's no, the TS100, the TS80 is a great portable soldering iron. There are several good bench soldering irons from brands like Heiko or Aouye, Aouye. You can find recommendations for those on my website, fpvknowitall.com. The main thing that's good for soldering a small tiny whoop is a tip, a different tip. So if we look at TS100 tips, we can see let's zoom in here. There are finer tips, right? This is a finer tip. This is a finer tip. This is a broader tip. For soldering on a very, very small tiny whoop, you may want a smaller tip to let you get in there more easily. But you don't need a different soldering iron, you need a different tip. If you have a giant soldering iron like this one from It's Not Sam, that's different. You don't want that. That's not going to be good for soldering on tiny whoops, no matter what It's Not Sam says. I assume that they're joking. Yeah. Let's take some questions from the Discord. I've been taking super chat questions. Let's continue taking care of the people who pay my bills, and then we'll circle back to the regular chat and get some questions from the regular chat, of course. This question from Seikek. How do you compare the feeling of flying different types of quads? I had flown only micro quads. Small quads feel quick and snappy, but the Cinewhoops feel like trucks. How could you describe different types of drones? Also, how would a 5-inch feel with a 4S battery? I think one of the best ways to describe how a quadcopter flies is the concept of disc loading. Disc loading means the weight of the quadcopter divided over the area of the props. And Chris Rosser has a fantastic video that I refer back to regularly.
Hi there.
The video is choosing the right prop diameter for a drone of a certain width. And this whole video is worth watching, okay? But I go back to this graph, which shows the disc loading of a certain prop size and weight, and then shows how actual quads fit in there. So we can see that for a 5-inch prop, like a really light 5-inch quad is going to come in around 600 grams. And that's a disc loading of, oops, this is in the way. A disc loading of, click away. Oh, I can't see it. Is it 6? I think it's 6. That's a disc loading of about 6 to 1. And then as we get to a heavier 5-inch, you get up to about 800 grams, which is a disc loading. I'm sorry, that's 8. 8, not 6. The green line is 6. So the disc loading for a 5-inch freestyle quad is somewhere around 8 to 1 to 10 to 1. Okay? And then as you go to smaller quads, you can get not identical, but similar flight characteristics by having a similar disc loading. So if you've got a quadcopter you like to fly, and you want to see if something is going to fly similarly, look at the disc loading for the quadcopter that you like, and then look at the disc loading for the other quad, and if they have similar disc loading, they may fly similarly. Quads with a lower disc loading are going to be more floaty and also have probably better thrust. They're probably going to accelerate better, although that's not a given. Thrust to weight ratio is a separate characteristic. But low disc loading quads often have higher thrust to weight ratio. Not always. So that's how I would sort of approach that question. Let's take a question from... Let's see. Let's take another Discord question. Xena wants to know, how do you calibrate the 6-position switch on the Radiomaster Boxer? Exactly like you calibrate other switches and knobs. The 6-position switch on a Radiomaster radio is not a bunch of switches. It's actually it's actually like a potentiometer. So what you do is you put it on the middle one, which is the 3rd or the 4th switch. You start the calibration procedure. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just like you would take a knob and turn it all the way to the left and all the way to the right. How about this question from Tio Ree, another patron in the Discord? Just a reminder, if you want to join these beautiful people in the Discord server, there's a link to my Patreon down in the video description below. And you can sign up on Patreon, and you can hang out in the Discord server with them during the stream. And I will occasionally give you preferential answering of your questions. Occasionally. Express LRS and DJI related question. Is a sweet spot in power and hertz to outperform an O3 connection to a V2 with the Iflight Crystal under the most circumstances? Is there a sweet spot? That's a tough one. You would have to experiment. I can't make up. I'm tempted to make up a number, but I can't. The O3 specifically has really good. It is able to create a usable link surprisingly far out. I can tell you that I fly 250 hertz and 1 watt almost all the time, and I have outrun my O3 using that setup. I feel like that's pretty close to the right balance, but you really should just test it because your experience may not match mine. To be fair, I was using the goggles too, not the V2 goggles, which you asked about the V2. Brandon Beans thinks that 150 hertz at 250 milliwatts should outperform the O3 signal.
I would also, if I can chime in real quick.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that one of the things that makes this question so difficult is that DJI signal has compression and retransmissions.
Yeah.
And it's using OFDM, which is a different type of modulation. So all three of those things make it so you can't just look at the power and the bandwidth and make a direct comparison based on the dB, right? You're going to have 8 different situations and different times based on all kinds of different environmental conditions. And I think, especially with O3 on auto, you're going to see a lot of changes and a lot of differences in those things. So I would say you just want to overshoot a little bit. Worst case, some people run Express LRS and dynamic power, so that's another option as well.
Yeah, nice. Good point.
Okay.
Alrighty. Continuing. Okay, let's take some questions from the YouTube chat. We're gonna do it. I have paid the bills. Now let's pay attention to the little people. No, I'm joking. Leo05 asks, is the difference between Radiomaster Zorro LBT, that's the European mode, and FCC only a software difference? Yes, Leo. With older radios like FreeSky, you had to flash different firmware to change the region, but it's entirely a software difference. In the Edge TX with the multi-protocol module, you can just change the mode by changing the sub-protocol in the radio setup. So you would go into, not radio setup, model setup. You would go down to internal module, and where the 4-in-1, you would set FreeSky as the protocol, and then you would change the sub-protocol to D16 or D16 EU. Yeah. Bob H. FPV says, technically, the main lead of the battery isn't actually necessary when the balance plug is connected because the main wires are included in it. So why is the main plug mandatory? Seems useless. Bob, the battery will discharge 150 amps sometimes. I mean, it depends on the battery, obviously. If you try pulling 150 amps through a balance plug, it will melt. The main lead is for high current discharge with 14 gauge or 12 gauge wires and a XT60 connector. The balance lead, you're 100% right. You could pull all of the battery voltage out of the balance lead, but only at maybe 1 or 2 amps without melting it. Justin Casey wants to know, do you think that the Ghost protocol is better than the XM Plus or the RXSR? Yes, 100% yes. There are four protocols that are what I consider to be the modern current generation of control protocols. They are Express LRS, Crossfire, Tracer, and Ghost. The reason they are the 4 modern control protocols is that they use the LoRa chipset from, I think it's the actual chip is from Siemens, but they use this LoRa technology to get extraordinarily good range and penetration. And they are, in every one of them, even Tracer, which is really my least favorite of the 4, are hands down better than the older protocols like XM Plus and RXSR. They're just a generational leap forward and are better in like every way. Semtech, not Siemens. Thank you. It's not Sam. Semtech. I got my S's mixed up. PX Saber asks, after switching to 6S, I'm getting a spark and a pop sound when I plug in my battery. Does that bother you? Can you avoid it? It's normal. As a lot of times, especially if you have a very big capacitor, that initial surge of current will cause that pop. If you notice scorching on your XT60 connector, it may be an issue, but a little pop is pretty normal when plugging in a 6S, so I wouldn't worry about that. If you want to avoid it, I don't think they make anti-spark XT60 connectors. There is a thing called an anti-spark connector that prevents that pop, but I'm pretty sure that the anti-spark connectors, I have never been able to find an anti-spark XT60. I've only ever found XT90s. Slickback asks, I'm planning to get Liftoff on my Xbox since I don't have a gaming PC. Is it the same as the Steam version? No. Liftoff on Xbox is more of a video game and less of a simulator. It doesn't. No. Yeah. The short answer is no. It's not the same. It is an FPV adjacent video game more than an FPV simulator, I would say. If you're intending to buy an FPV simulator, you will be disappointed with Liftoff on the Xbox. They tried to make a game that would sort of bring FPV to the masses, and FPV hardcore enthusiasts didn't like it as much, I think, because it wasn't what they expected. Torpedo law. Should we comply with the FAA come this September? Oh boy. That's an interesting question. Because if I were to say, no, F the FAA, don't comply, then, that would piss off some people at the FAA and maybe might make them look closer at some of the videos I've posted and wonder if they could find anything to, get me in trouble with. Surely they would never take personal offense to that kind of thing. But if I were to say, yes, you must comply with all laws, then I would not be being honest. So here's my real opinion. It is up to every person to decide what they're going to do in every situation. And sometimes the things that you do have consequences. Well, I mean, in a way, everything you do always has consequences. And I think that most people would agree that just because a government passes a law or rule or regulation doesn't necessarily mean that it is always wrong from a sort of a moral sense. Just because they pass this rule doesn't mean that it is always morally wrong to break the rule and always morally right to comply with the rule. Right? And we could come up with, what if you are, you've been mortally wounded and you have to get to the hospital, so you break the speed limit because you're trying to save a person's life. Right? You could come up with all these weird, stupid, moral situations. But the basic principle of government passes rules, individuals decide whether to comply with those rules or not, and then sometimes if they choose not to comply, there are consequences. That calculus, I don't think you can argue with it. I mean, that's just how things work. And so, come September 2023, the FAA will expect people to have remote ID transponders on any drone heavier than 250 grams or any drone being used for Part 107 operations, regardless of weight. And it will be up to you to decide if you comply with that. And if you choose not to comply, then there could be consequences. The FAA could come fine you and take away your 107 if you have a 107. I think that one of the things that plays into the decision of whether to comply with a rule is whether the rule seems like it is accomplishing something that you agree with and believe in, or whether it seems like the rule is kind of stupid and arbitrary and doesn't accomplish things that you believe in. Right? Like, for example, there are laws against murdering people. Well, the law against murdering people is not the reason that most people don't murder people. As I think it's Ricky Gervais. It might be Penn Teller. It might be Penn Jillette. I always get this quote mixed up, and I can't remember who said it. He said, I'm already murdering exactly as many people as I would like to murder. I don't need laws or religious strictures to stop me from murdering people, right? So what I'm getting at there is that the law about not murdering people reflects a value that most people share. And so most people obey that law, not because necessarily, well, there's a gray area where maybe you would murder some people, but you're not doing it because you don't want to go to prison. Like, obviously, there's always a gray area. But for the most part, most people agree with that principle and obey that rule because they agree with it. So when you look at remote ID, you may say to yourself, is this accomplishing something beneficial that I believe in, and therefore I will comply with it, not necessarily because it's a rule and I just am a rule-obeying person, but because I believe in it. Or you may look at it and go, this doesn't accomplish anything that I think is beneficial, and I'm not going to comply because I just... And then the flip side of it is, what are the consequences of not obeying, right? Because another reason why you obey rules, because you think the rule is like I may think the speed limit on a road is too low, but I don't speed because I don't want to get a ticket. So there are going to be people who choose to comply because they don't want the consequence of getting fined by the FAA. FAA fines start at $1,500 typically per infraction. That's a lot of money. They go up, by the way. That's where they start. A final thing that I would point out is that we have a presumption of innocence in this country, that we're innocent until proven guilty. And there are ways in which that isn't as well sort of protected as it could be. So, don't lean on that too hard. But if you choose not to comply with those rules and you don't want to get caught and fined, then one of the most basic things you can do is not give law enforcement or regulatory agencies the ammunition they need to prove that you did it. Everybody deserves a good defense, even people who break the rules. And so don't make it obvious that you're breaking the rules. You're just making their job easier. I mean, 507RC points out, how many of us comply with all FAA regulations today? I do. I comply with every single one of them. And if you think I don't, then it's up to you to prove it. Bardwell's going to be forced into making a how to comply with the FAA video in a week after this rant. I probably will make that video sometime getting closer to September 2023. I will make a video because I think that for people who don't want to get in trouble, or for people who just want to follow the rules, I feel like people who elect to follow the rules get a bad rap in today's society to some degree. Like, if you choose to follow the rules, you must be a stupid sheeple, right? And only people who rebel against all authority are the true American individuals, whatever. Sorry, this is the European stream on Sunday, but I'm sure European watchers also understand this tendency of American culture. And it's like, if you know who knee-jerk rejects all authority? Rebellious teenagers. That's not an actual mature stance. A mature stance is to say, sometimes it makes sense to go with the flow. Sometimes it makes sense to fight for what you believe in. And you have to know the difference between those. So there's people out there with a Part 107 whose whole livelihood is based on that Part 107, and they're gonna just follow the rules. They may not like it, but they cannot afford to risk their entire livelihood by losing their 107. And I'm gonna make a video for the people who choose to comply, telling them what is expected of them and how to comply. And some people are going to watch that video and go, Bardwell's an FAA sellout, because they don't understand the difference between here is what the rule says and here is how you can choose to comply with it, and And I personally endorse this rule and think you should comply with it. Rob Schlicht wants to know, what are the chances you get full consequences on the first offense rather than a warning? Rob Schlicht, I have never heard of a case where the FAA came to a drone pilot and said, F you, you're fined, you're done, we don't want to hear it. In every case I'm personally aware of, they come to you and they say, we think that there's an infraction here. Will you talk to us more about it? And usually they are interested in education first. And if you are cool about it, usually on the first infraction at least, they don't bother enforcing the fine. They'll just, in some cases they have said, would you make an updated video to a YouTuber explaining like what you did wrong and what the rule is, because their goal is to educate people. I obviously I don't know if that will be true forever. But that's generally the case. There are usually, when you see somebody getting fines, it is a particularly egregious example. Like, for example, Paul Nurkala got fined for the Flight of the Year video where he flew around a train. I'm pretty sure that Paul Nurkala was cool with the FAA when they called him up. Like that he wasn't like, if you can't tell me what to do. And they were like, fine, let's make an example out of this guy. I'm pretty sure that he was cool about it and he still got fined. I think that him flying near a train was critical infrastructure. Maybe, I don't know, but like that really got them, they were like, we got to do something about this. Other cases where people have gotten fined have been cases where they have refused to. The FAA is like, hey, we think you're breaking the rules. Will you talk to us? And they're like, no comment. And the FAA is finally like, okay, I guess we're going to just fine you. Anyway. Alex, if you actually pull this off, I'll be impressed. There are so many reasons, both technical and regulatory, why this would be an extraordinary accomplishment. I don't know of any, like you could have a cellular network, right? But that would only work when you're in range of cellular networks. As far as satellite connection goes, it seems like the way to go would be something like Starlink, but a Starlink would be way too heavy to fly. I don't know how big of a plane you're planning on flying. That's fascinating. If you pull it off, let me know. Finley FPV wants to know, what's your favorite action cam for FPV? Thank you for a £2 super chat, Finley. I currently am using the Hero 8 as my go-to because the Hero 8, generally my go-to is the cheapest GoPro that is sold at Best Buy. So I got a couple Hero 8s a while back for about $200. I got them with the Best Buy insurance, and I'm going to keep flying them and replacing them under insurance until I can't get the 8 at Best Buy anymore. Left Nut FPV. Left Nut. That's great. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Let me just make sure you didn't leave a message. Why no white props? That's a good question. Why aren't there white props? I do know that the dye that's used in props affects like the brittleness and other characteristics of the plastic. No idea. But you're right. There's no white props. How about that? We got about 15 minutes left of the stream. Does GemFan have white props? Who makes white props? Beta FPV has tiny whoop props in white. Oh, 7-inch white prop. Okay, apparently people make white props. Ethics. Oh, Ethics candy cane props have a white. Good point. Okay. Well, there are white props. That's the answer. I was wrong. We got to get a couple more super chats out of the way. The stream is getting close to ending. Thomas wants to know. No, not Thomas. I'm sorry. Crazy Dope. Thank you for a $5 super chat. My DJI Radio V1 won't stop beeping as if my throttle was up. Your throttle's up. Push down on the throttle a little harder. See if it stops. You may have a calibration issue with your throttle. You may need to recalibrate your throttle. But I'll bet you that if you push down just a little harder on the throttle, like flex the don't break it, okay? But I'll bet you if you just like push down a little harder and flex the plastic just a smidge, then it will. But that's the only thing I can think of. Is that the throttle is actually up. It's just out of calibration. Parkour Guy says, please answer my last super chat. I need help. Thank you for $2. We just hadn't got to it yet, Parkour Guy. Don't sweat. Thank you for a $5 super chat, Parkour Guy. My first 5-inch build, SpeedyBee F405 stack, AKK FX3 video transmitter, Crossfire RX Nano. Where do I solder the blue wire on my VTX? That's FC UART. Okay, no problem. We got this. SpeedyBee F405. Ooh. Doghouse FPV. Sorry, this is not you, Parkour Guy. Doghouse module says here's an Iridium. Is the Iridium network still up? I guess it is. An Iridium satellite module. You could put that on a plane for sure. Joey W, I'm 99% sure that UART2 defaults to the receiver UART on a SpeedyBee, so I would not use RX2 because I would assume that's where his receiver is. Where's the wiring diagram? Okay. Where's the video transmitter? Here's the video transmitter. This blue wire here goes to T1. That's where I would put the FC UART wire. Goes to T1. That is for smart audio. And that's where I would put that. Yep. T1. Lane Seawright. Thank you for a $10 super chat. Just wanted to thank you for your advice about XpressLRS receiver stuck in bootloader when on battery. The LRS Discord recommended a pull-up resistor. One burnt SpeedyBee flight controller later. Oh, God. How'd you burn the flight controller with a pull-up resistor? What did you do? Oh, that sucks. Different UART was a trick. Oh, well, I'm sorry you burned your flight controller. That's sad. I'm glad you got it sorted out. Fortune Cookie, thank you for a $10 super chat. Just got back from our annual FPV meet with Connecticut FPV. Can we get a shout out for our organizer, Sonny, for putting together a great group? Super welcoming. Yeah, absolutely. For $10, I'll shout out. Okay, I won't shout out anyone you want. I can think of some people I wouldn't shout out for $10. But I don't know anything about Sonny, and I assume they're a good person. So for thank you, Sonny, for putting up a great event. Okay. We are caught up on Super Chats again. Let's check the queue. Liam Wetzel asks, I had an arm dip in flight yesterday. My dynamic idle min was at 3,500 RPM. I fly 3-inch. I thought this was high. I raised it to 4,500. What could cause arm dips if not dynamic idle? So 3,500, I don't know for a 3-inch whether that's the right value. Where did you get that value? Somewhere out there is a page suggesting dynamic idle values for different sizes. That's the first thing I would check. Let's see here. Let's zoom in on this a little bit. Let's see. idle RPM tuning. Lower D-shot idle percent. Lower idle values. Is this accurate for 4.4? Huh. I don't know what the RPM, high minimum RPM of 35,000 to 4,000. Huh. I think this is not up to date for 4.4. But it feels like 3,500 is high enough that you shouldn't be stuttering. I really feels like it should be. Oh, Chris Rosser. Wait, 50 is 3-inch. Wait. Where does Chris Rosser have a tuning video?
There's a snip in the Discord for a quicker reference if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Carter Roto. Chris Rosser has a tuning guide for dynamic idle in Betaflight 4.4. Credit to him. He suggests for a 3-inch prop an idle RPM of 50. So according to Chris Rosser, you're a little low at 35. So try taking that up to 50. And I will have to send Chris Rosser a super chat to thank him because he really answered this one, not me. Gregory Dahl wants to know, are S-pads for servos? Can we add servos for action on quads? Gregory Dahl, you can add servos to a quad. The S-pads are typically motor outputs, though. Signal pads for motor outputs. You can convert a motor output to a servo output. It's fairly tedious under Betaflight. NeoFlyer has a question that I just saw, which is, how is the FAA going to catch people flying without remote ID? Are they going to drive around? No. The FAA has a program they're working on, LEAP, the Law Enforcement Action Program. And the idea for LEAP is that the FAA will train local law enforcement on what the rules are, how to recognize when people are breaking them, and how to enforce them. The local law enforcement can't enforce a federal regulation, but what'll happen is law enforcement will get a call. There's a boy with a drone and he's threatening my little dog. Oh, 911, come help me. The police will show up and they will say, excuse me, sir, can you land your drone? We got a report that you're flying in this area. We just want to know, hold on, checks notes from the FAA. Do you have a trust test result? Do you have a remote ID transponder? You don't. Oh. Well, I'm going to need to get your name and information. And then they pass that back to the FAA. On such and such a day, at such and such a time, so-and-so was observed to be flying a drone at such and such a location without remote ID. And then the FAA will decide what to do with it. That's how they'll catch you. Law enforcement assistance. What did I say? Action? Probably said action. LEAP. Are we caught up on Super Chats? Valenti, are we caught up on Super Chats? We only got 3 minutes left. I think we are.
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Let's see. Let's take one more question. One more question. Hang on. I'm having trouble with my... There we go. Oh, this is a quick one. What is LBT or FCC and which should I choose? FCC is for almost the whole world except the EU. LBT is for the EU. Do you recommend using dynamic power mode on Express LRS? I use it. It seems to work pretty well on the latest firmwares. Are there any known issues with the GoPro 11 Mini and Hypersmooth? Not that I know of. GoPros are usually a very, very good stabilization. But the GoPro 11 Mini has specifically had some issues. I don't know of any issues. But 661 FPV says only a federal FAA agent can ask you to land your drone. Good luck with that, man. This must be the European stream, because I don't know if you know how America works, but when the cops come up and say, hey, buddy, do this, and you don't do it, even if you have the right to not do it, sometimes things don't go well. So that is going to bring us to the end of the stream. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thanks to everybody who left questions, chatted. Thanks to the patrons in the Discord, of course. And thank you for everybody who left super chats, obviously. I will be back at 8 p.m. tomorrow, and I will see you there. In the meantime, Aaron Ciotti. Ciotti is streaming today. Ooh, let's find his comment. Aaron Ciotti is streaming. Oh, there it is. Hang on, catch up. And he's got a link to his stream in the chat. Head on over there if you keep the streaming action going. Bye, everybody. Now I have to actually end the stream.